Hi, everybody. I hope you all are doing well as we enter week 9 of quarantine now. And I thought I'd just jump right in. So, today I'm going to be talking just a little bit about really the main thing we're all kind of wondering right now, and it's really a hard thing that we struggle with when difficult or unique times like this occur. So that question is, why is this happening? Why some of us might not be affected by this as much, but there's tons of people out there who are really facing very difficult times, and it's hard as a Christian body, to wonder where God is in all of this. And right away, the perfect example of this is Job. Job is a man who something, imagine this on a scale of a million times worse, happened to him. Everything was taken away from him, from his family to his very own well being. And he struggled with the same thing we are right now of why is this happening? And after one of his first challenges in Job 1 through 10, um, his entire body is just totally cursed by Satan with all sorts of illnesses and pain and torture. And his wife tells him, "Why don't you curse out at God? He's allowing these things to happen to you." And his response is, again in Job chapter 1, verse 10, "Should we accept only good things from the hand of God and never anything bad?" And so that's a very good reminder, is that in this earth, we're not just always going to get puppies and rainbows. And that's not meant to be, something scary, but we have to be able to take good with the bad and make the best of every situation. And that is one very positive thing that is coming out of these times, is that even though it is very hard for a lot of people are taking the opportunity to do some real good. So I think that's something we can focus on, is that we need to take the good and the bad and do our best to make the bad into as good as it can possibly be. As Job struggles continue on, this sense of optimism that we first see in chapter 1 starts to fade a little. And one of his friends really has some good encouragement in Job chapter 5, verses 19 through 20. "From 6 disasters he will rescue you. Even in the seventh he will keep you from evil. He will save you from death in time of famine, from the power of the sword in time of war." So in this scenario, Job is really wondering where God is. And a lot of people in the world today are wondering the same thing. And so even though these are hard times, his friend tells Job that God will always rescue us. And he always has, from death and time of famine, from the sword and war, from disease, we will always be rescued. Now, one thing that is hard, is what exactly does rescue mean? It doesn't always mean, the way we would consider it as humans. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that because of Jesus, we already are all rescued. We are rescued. That is the verse of John 3:16. We are all rescued as Christians through Him. So to worry and live in fear and wonder where God is not the right way, because as Job's friend points out, is that he will rescue us. He always has. And no matter how hard times can get, we're always going to be okay. And to close out Job, after all of Job's challenges and testing are over, in chapter 42, 2 through 3, he says, "I know you can do anything and no one can stop you. You asked, 'Who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorance?' It is I, and I was talking about things I knew nothing about, things far too wonderful for me. So Job is talking about when he doubted God and called him out, and that's something that we can learn from. You know, when we're doubting God right now in these difficult times, we have to remember that we don't know what's going on. We just have to trust Him. That's what faith is about. And God blesses this faith, this trust. Job lived, it says in the last verse of Job, a long and fruitful life, 140 years. Now, that may not exactly happen to all of us, but God will reward those who trust in Him and are faithful. So that's something we need to remember. And another good example of somebody wondering why this is happening in times of trouble is David in the book of Psalms. We see this over and over again where David is calling out God, why have you forsaken me? You know, things like that. And one thing that we always see in the book of David is that after David calls out God, he always says, "But you are good." And that's something that we need to remember. And a very good verse I found for times like this is Psalms 46, 1 through 2. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. We cannot fear. God is always going to be there for us. Instead, we need to pray and trust in Him and ask for His guidance for what we can do during these times. God is not abandoning us. God is still there just as ever. Good things are still happening all around the world. And, you know, these times are difficult and confusing, but as Job and David have pointed out to us, that we just need to trust and stay faithful to God. And a closing note is a verse that we love and we read all the time. And it is interesting. We apply it to lots of different things. And so I'm going to kind of apply it here. The verse is Jeremiah 29:11. So, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster. We will not live a life of disaster. Though it may seem that way to our eyes from all angles, God is constantly working good through each and every one of us, to give you a future and a hope. In those days when you pray, I will listen if you look for me wholeheartedly. You will find me, I will be found by you, says the Lord. So in these times when we're lost and confused and wondering what is going on, we need to look to God. We need to pray, look for Him wholeheartedly. As Jeremiah says, that is how we are going to get through all of this. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.